When I read this, I thought, oh, it all takes place in one place. And I'm just kind of kneeling down over the course of this movie. That's easy. This is great. That's going to be just such an easy movie to make. I was so wrong. I remember the first time I read Mine, I thought, this is really an ambitious thing in its sort of sense of minimalism. This is a movie that takes place all on one location. For the most part, there are obviously the flashbacks and the stuff leading up to it and all that, but 70% of this movie takes place with a guy stuck on a mine. And it seemed like a really interesting concept and a bold choice to do. And then I saw some of the Fabio's work before. I saw a short film that they did, and I just was incredibly impressed. So you have this movie about extraterrestrials where you don't see a single alien. It's never really mentioned. It's just this dude getting to this girl, and that all happens to just be the background noise. And I thought, that's really interesting. And if there's anyone who can direct a movie about a guy stuck on a mine and not make it just a boring movie about a guy stuck on a mine, it's probably these guys. Basically what I think the movie is about a man who is actually on a mission in some unidentified country, and I think that's to keep it from being any sort of political statement. But he's there, and he gets stuck on a landmine, his buddy dies, and now he's there. The effects of dehydration are super intense, man. If you're in the sun like that, the amount of water that your body loses versus the amount of water that you need versus the amount of water that you're able to carry if you're supposed to be on just a short mission like that. Within about a day or two, you could be so dehydrated that you start to hallucinate. And then plus the sleep deprivation, plus the extreme exposure to the elements, all that stuff, it's really hard to say what was exactly sort of manifestations of his own subconscious, what were hallucinations from being sleep deprived as well as dehydrated, plus being in an extreme situation like that could cause you to have some sort of psychological break. That being said, there's also a beautiful element to it where it's the metaphor of this guy is physically stuck on this mine. He is going through everything in his life that emotionally has kept him stuck on his emotional mine. And once he is able to sort of converge the two and deal with them both in that moment, he's able to move forward. The character of Mike, he just had it a little rough growing up. He had an abusive father, and his mother was ill and all that, and he never really found his way, never really found sort of any sense of courage or purpose or sense of moving on. And it's ironic and sort of poetic that he did find that, in fact, when he was then stuck in one place on a mine against his will and found that strength to persevere. This character allowed me the chance to shave my head for the first time. Yeah. The biggest challenge on set while we were shooting this was partially the elements. It was really hot. We were actually in these sand dunes on a little tiny island off the coast of Morocco. So we would have sandstorms. We would have giant sand dunes. We would have, We also had a very small crew. We were running on an extremely tight skeleton crew, so everybody was participating in everything. I mean, I was carrying equipment, everybody was carrying equipment, and this was just the only way we were going to get this done, because we had the amount of time where the sun was right to get a certain amount of scenes during the day, and we didn't have contingency plans if we didn't make days. We had to make every day, which was, I think, a huge stress on the two Fabios. But as two first-time directors, they pulled it off, and we did it. We made it. I was kneeling on my right knee for probably a month and a half, just like on the ground. At first, I was like, no knee pads. Like, I'm on sand, it doesn't matter, I don't need knee pads and all that. And then my knee it was like eventually just like sandpaper. It just started to take the skin off my knee, and I was like, okay, maybe I need knee pads. And then I put a knee pad on, and then that would start to ache because it was, the whole thing. There was just no way to get comfortable for a month and a half while kneeling. Like, if you just think about being on your knees for a month and a half, it's really uncomfortable. A lot of the thing that helped with the passage of time and the sort of character arc of this guy who really just stands there, and you can see, sort of like sunset and sunrise and stuff like that, but one of the ways that we really showed time was just the damage that the elements really took on Mike. I mean, by the time he's been there for 60 hours or 70 hours or something on this mine in the sun with no shade, I mean, he just looks like a piece of crispy bacon. Like, his lips were just cracked and bleeding, and he was so sunburned and his skin was peeling, and just completely dehydrated to the point where he's hallucinating, and it's painful to watch. It's hard to see a guy really get into that state. And then, of course, there's also not just the natural elements, but he's got animals involved, and he's out in the desert, and it's freezing. And then there's this mysterious Berber character who keeps showing up, who he's not sure, is this guy fucking with me? Like, the guy had a lot going on over the course of those 70 hours. I think there's a really interesting dynamic between the Berber character played by Clint Dyer and Mike, a soldier from America who's in this place that's not his homeland, and he doesn't know what he's doing, and he feels like he's lost. I mean, I think the location largely is also a metaphor for how Mike is sort of feeling about his life. It's this vast expanse that just seems like this hostile land that he doesn't know how to navigate. And the Berber in the movie, that's his home. That's his place. He knows his thing. I think there's less of an intentional line drawn or connection made between what's really going on sort of in northern Africa, where the Berbers traditionally live, and any sort of soldiers being there. I think intentionally the choice was made that this was not going to be a commentary on the modern military or anything like that. It was going to be simply a metaphor of a man who's afraid to take that next step because he thinks it could be his last. It was funny. I never at any moment felt like the whole movie was on my shoulders. Like, I felt like we were kind of all a team making this movie because everybody was really involved in everything. We had so many other great performances in the movie as well. We had Annabelle Wallis, who was amazing. We had Jeff Bells, who was amazing as well. I mean, Clint Dyer, Tom Cullen. There was really a lot of us out there doing this. It never really felt like I was on my own. I mean, there were a lot of days where I was the only actor on set, and that was kind of, daunting, especially in a place where, nobody really spoke English as a first language. So you'd find yourself having really simple conversations. How are you? Good? Yeah, me too. Me too. The Fabios. I really, really enjoyed working with the Fabios. They were great, man. They were two really passionate, interesting, and incredibly different people who happened to work so well together as a team. They both have different approaches to what they like to focus on as directing. It was amazing. They were sort of like two halves of the same coin. Fabio Guaglione, he was the one who was involved more so in the story and what was going on and sort of the overall arc of what we were intending to do with this metaphor that was their movie. And then Fabio Resinaro was just like a sort of maestro with a camera. Like he wanted to be the one who was right up close and personal with the camera and sort of dealing with the shots and all that stuff. And we had just an amazing crew. It was also very hard for me, and still is hard for me, to do Fabio Guaglione and Fabio Resinaro. So to me, they're just the Fabios. I know definitely I've had moments in my life where I felt like I didn't know how to overcome whatever obstacle I had in front of me. Whatever size it may have been, it definitely wasn't equivalent to standing on a landmine, which I can imagine would be much worse. But yeah, as sort of like a metaphor for that, I think everybody can relate in some way. There's always something that you should be afraid of doing in your life, and it's just a matter of taking the courage to take that step forward and doing it.
Vamos.